story time about how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I didn't have a really good relationship with my parents or with my brother. The only person that I did get along with was my sister. You see, we're kind of a religious family. When I was 15, I knew that I liked girls, but there was no way that I would tell my parents that I did. They would never accept that their daughter liked other girls. I basically suppressed all of those feelings for about 5 years. When I turned 20, I decided to come out to my sister. My sister was super open, accepting, and she was really loving about it. She never once made me feel bad. I asked her what she thought about me telling the rest of the family, and she said definitely not. She knew that our parents would freak. I finally got my first girlfriend a year after that. I actually met her on my 21st birthday. At this point, I still live with my parents, so I basically said that she was a best friend of mine. My parents, of course, believed me because they had no other reason not to. She would come over to my house, and we would just spend time together there. She eventually got really upset that I would never tell my parents about us, and she decided to break up with me because of it. Of course, I was brokenhearted about it, but 3 weeks later, I met my brother's now girlfriend. Right off the bat, we got along really well. Like I said before, I never had a really good relationship with my brother. He suspected that I liked girls, but he never came out and told me. But because of this, there was always tension between us. Also, I never understood why his girlfriend liked him because he has no personality and zero sense of humor, which is honestly why I think her and I got along so well. Anytime she came over to our house, I would just find her so funny. My brother had to go out of town for work, so she invited me to go out with her friends for lunch. Of course, I quickly accepted. I honestly didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely developing a crush on her. She was my kind of girl. I mean, I guess my brother and I have the same type. She was funny and incredibly smart. After that lunch, she asked me if I wanted to hang out another 2 times when my brother was away. Everything was going pretty well, but after the 3rd time that we hung out, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew this was going to be a really big problem for me. I'm the kind of person that's always honest with people as much as I can. When my brother finally came back, she started coming over to the house more. I was both excited but worried at the same time because I knew that I had feelings for her. One day she came over, but there was nobody home. That's when I decided to be honest with her and tell her the truth. I opened up to her and told her my history and that I had a crush on her. She smiled and told me that it was okay. That's when she grabbed my hand and we started kissing. Trust me, I know that it's totally wrong because she's my brother's girlfriend, but I was falling in love with her. That's when my brother comes in and sees us making out. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when my brother comes in and catches me making out with his girlfriend. He instantly went berserk and started punching a hole through a wall. His girlfriend tried to calm him down, but he told her that if she touched him, he would probably end up hitting her. Luckily, no one else in the house was home, but my brother threatened to tell my parents. Like I said in part 1, my parents are very religious, and I knew that they would never accept me as I am. That's when my brother said that he had already been suspecting of me and his girlfriend because her and I had been hanging out so much. He then started calling me a bunch of names like freak and other really inappropriate things. Then the fight became about him and his girlfriend. His girlfriend started telling him that she had been miserable the whole time that she was with him and that he had been manipulating her the whole time. She told him he was even toxic, which I can believe because my brother's kind of like that. She then left the house and told him that she never wanted to see him again. My brother started asking me a bunch of questions like how long I had been seeing her. I told him that this was the first time her and I had ever kissed. Then he told me that I needed a man to teach me how to be a woman. So instead of staying and arguing with him, I decided to leave. I decided to go ahead and tell my parents the truth before my brother did. I was absolutely petrified. I told my parents that I like girls, and I told them what had happened with my brother's girlfriend. That's when my dad told me that they weren't upset that I like girls, and that they would have accepted me either way. But they were really upset that I had hurt my brother's feelings, and that I caused them to break up. They were surprisingly okay with what I had told them. I mean, after years of being petrified of them knowing the truth, I felt so free. But I also told them that my brother had been toxic towards her and that's why she didn't want to be with him anymore. My parents actually ended up being more angry with my brother than with me. But you'll never guess, a few months later my brother told my parents that he's bi. I haven't contacted my brother's ex, but I really feel like I should. I mean, I was falling in love with her. What do you guys think I should do? P.S. My brother's much happier.
This is why you should never run away at night. I got into a huge argument with my family and I decided to leave the house. Mind you, it was 10 p.m. and the town I live in, everything closes at 9. So I decided to grab some McDonald's and park somewhere alone. After crying for 20 minutes, I calmed down only to notice my car doors were unlocking on their own. I locked them and checked the seat behind me cause I had a gut feeling there was nothing. Few minutes later, it was awfully quiet but I kept hearing a whisper. I decided to just put on some Netflix and just chill even though I was starting to feel uneasy. Then I caught a figure in the corner of my left eye. I turned around quickly and I get a feeling that this figure is now in front of me. Out of fear knowing what's about to happen, I became paralyzed. I turned slowly and...
Story time about the most embarrassing moment working as a TSA agent. So I work for the TSA and have for a few years now. It's a good job overall. I'm underpaid, but the benefits are nice and I get overtime when I want it. Over a year ago, during the week leading up to Christmas, we had some really bad weather that delayed all the flights. I volunteered to stay late so that my coworkers could go home to their families. Most of the work was done anyway, so it was mostly just standing around waiting for the odd latecomer. I was working the AIT, the space tube thingy, when 3 passengers came up together, a middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a teenage boy. Mom goes through, all is fine. Dad goes through, all is fine. Kid comes up, I get a good look at him. Hoodie, sweatpants, shortish hair, smooth face. I figure he's about 13, maybe 14. I hit the button, direct him to wait with me for a moment, and then gesture to the screen, which lit up his chest area. I tell him that I have to pat the area down. He's a little nervous. I figure that's because he's so young. This is probably his first time getting a pat down, but he says okay and I start the pat down. I do the left side of the chest and feel some moob, which catches me off guard because he didn't look chubby at all. I move to the right side of the chest, read what's on the hoodie, and it all clicks at once. The hoodie has the name of a local college on it. This is an adult, not a child. He's not wearing sweatpants. She is wearing yoga pants. She doesn't even know the couple that just came through. I look at her face, which is bright red, my hand's still on her boob, and I pull it back like I just got bit by a snake. I immediately call for my supervisor, who comes over and asks what's wrong, and I explain the situation to her. That's when my supervisor covers her mouth in what I believe is utter shock. After groping this woman that I thought was a boy, I call my supervisor over. I tell her the situation and she covers her mouth. At first, I thought she was absolutely mortified, but then I realized she's trying not to laugh. She takes a minute to pull herself together, tells me to go take a break, and finishes screening the passenger herself. Once that was done, I apologize to the passenger. She tells me it's fine, that it wasn't the first time she was mistaken for a boy, and she probably should have said something before I started touching her. I leave her alone and go talk to my supervisor to figure out how exactly fired I am. She tells me to calm down, that it was just an honest mistake, and that she has my back if the passenger files an official complaint, but that probably won't happen and I shouldn't be worried. That reassured me a little, but I still groped a woman and ruined Christmas, so I feel like an absolute monster. I swallow my shame and finish my shift, then I go to the airport proper to find some food because I just finished a 12-hour shift and there's no way I have energy to cook dinner. I saw my hapless victim sitting at her gate waiting for her flight. I went up to her to apologize again and saw that the flight had been delayed until morning. It was about 11 at night at this point. I apologize again, she says it's fine, and I ask her if she's planning to stay the whole night. She said she has to because all the hotels in the area are booked. I tell her that I'm getting some dinner and I offer to get her some food as well. After all, I already got to second base. I think it's only fair that I buy her dinner. She agrees and we go to one of the restaurants that's open late, get some food, and start eating. She said she gets mistaken for a boy a lot and it's not a big deal. We ended up talking for a few hours before I finally told her that I had to get home and apologize again for the accidental molestation. She said that all is forgiven if I promise to take her on a real date when she gets back. I agreed. She gave me her number and I immediately started texting her when I got home. We kept talking until her flight finally left. When she got back, I picked her up at the airport and a few days later took her on a real date that I promised her. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.
Story time about how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad is an absolute DILF. He used to be a competitive bodybuilder and even did some modeling back in the day. Well, let's just say my boyfriend didn't turn out with the same looks. Don't get me wrong, my boyfriend is really sweet, but he's not the best looking guy. One of the reasons we started dating and I really liked him was because of how considerate and loving he was. We started off as friends and he would take me out to dinner, wine and dine me, eventually asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. We both come from wealthy families, and our families loved the idea of us being together. Exactly a year ago, we moved in together, and he got a new job that required him to travel a lot. Well, he asked his dad to come check on me. So his dad would come over, we would watch movies, and just hang out. But one night we decided to do some drinking. I got super tipsy, and so did he. One thing led to another, and we ended up, And after that, we did it over and over. Of course, my boyfriend's dad felt super guilty, and so did I. I mean, he was cheating on his wife with me, and I was cheating on his son with him. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After my boyfriend's dad and I had hooked up a couple of times, of course, he felt really guilty, and so did I. We decided to end things cordially and never tell anyone about it. Fast forward to when my boyfriend comes home from his work trip. I had to pretend like nothing happened, but it was really hard because at this point I definitely caught feelings for my boyfriend's dad. I became really distant from my boyfriend and he started noticing. He also asked me one day if his dad came over to check up on me, which I said yes. After that, things were just not the same between my boyfriend and I. He would always ask me why I never touched him or kissed him, and I would just say that I felt bad or that I had my period. A month later, my boyfriend goes on another work trip. My boyfriend even invited me to come on the work trip, but I said no. Instead, as soon as he left, I called his dad and told him to come over. I told him I just wanted to talk, but really, His dad came over, we talked for about an hour, and then it happened again. It's like we just couldn't help ourselves. That's when he told me that he was catching feelings for me and that maybe even wanted to get a divorce. Part 3 is part 3 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad tells me that he wants to get a divorce from his wife because he's catching feelings for me. He even suggested that we could move away to another town. And yes, at this point, I had totally fallen for him too. But at the same time, I still had a relationship with his son. But to be honest with you guys, I didn't have the guts to tell my boyfriend that I loved his dad. Since my boyfriend was still on the work trip, his dad would come over almost every single day. His wife, aka my mother-in-law, didn't even notice that she was coming over to my place. She thought he was at work and at the gym. We are now fully in love. My boyfriend came back from his work trip and of course, I was still distant. A few days later, he asked me what was wrong and I just don't know what to tell him. His dad told me to keep quiet for now because he wants to figure out what to do. I don't want to end a marriage and I know I don't want to break my boyfriend's heart. But at the same time, I am in love with his dad. I know you guys are going to think I'm a terrible person, but I genuinely need your advice. What do you guys think I should do? Should I be honest with my boyfriend?